Majority of people now believe psychedelics are breakthrough medicines, that the right compound in the right dose can fix depression, trauma, even addiction. It sounds like progress, science catching up with what was once dismissed. But the deeper findings point somewhere far more uncomfortable, that it isn't the substance doing the healing at all. This video looks at what psychedelic research is actually revealing about meaning, connection, and why modern medicine may have been asking the wrong questions all along. So if the cure isn't the chemical, where is it? This is Drugs and Addiction, an Anarchist Perspective, Dickie Dredd. And this is part 43 in the video series of Chapter 5, Science, Scale and Lies. Section 44, Psychedelic Science and the Return of Meaning. After half a century of silence, psychedelic research has returned from exile. Institutions once complicit in suppression now lead the revival. MAPS in the US, Imperial College London and Johns Hopkins University. What was branded heresy has become frontier science. MDMA for PTSD, psilocybin for depression, LSD microdosing for creativity. These are not countercultural fantasies, but peer-reviewed trials. Yet behind the data lies something older and more radical, the rediscovery of meaning itself. The results defy the pharmacological orthodoxy. Psychedelics do not mute symptoms, they rewrite experience. Participants describe not chemical relief, but revelation, a recognition that pain belongs to a larger pattern. Clinical language struggles to contain that dimension. Where psychiatry speaks of remission, psychedelic research speaks of integration. Healing becomes reconnection rather than correction. The laboratories use brain scanners instead of incense, but the essence is unchanged. Carhart-Harris and Friston's entropic brain theory suggests that psychedelics loosen rigid predictive loops, freeing the mind from its own algorithms. Hierarchy collapses, perception decentralizes, order dissolves into temporary chaos. The functional MRI image of this state, networks disintegrating and reforming, mirrors what mystics once called ego death. Science, cautiously, has begun to map transcendence. Michael Pollan calls this the return of meaning, the reversal of modernity's exile of the sacred. The experience reintroduces awe to a culture addicted to control and exposes the limits of measurement itself. No graph can capture the texture of revelation. No metric can quantify the sudden reappearance of love. As one Johns Hopkins participant explained, it wasn't the drug that healed me, it was remembering that I am alive. This renaissance challenges the mechanistic model that has defined medicine since Descartes. Where the old psychiatry saw the mind as machine, psychedelic science sees it as an ecosystem capable of renewal. Setting and story, i.e. shaping the very physical, psychological and spiritual environment in which we use, the triad, rediscovered from indigenous practice, shape outcomes more than dosage or molecule. The researcher becomes facilitator, not mechanic. Healing depends not on control, but on surrender. An idea both radical and ancient. See back to section 22, we talked about that. Psychedelics bridge what modernity split apart: biology and spirituality, chemistry and story. They re-enchant science by placing the human subject back at the centre of inquiry. When a patient emerges from psilocybin therapy with forgiveness instead of fear, the data point is not a number but a narrative. The mind becomes a microscope and field. There is a political pulse beneath the neuroscience. The very substances once blamed for rebellion now point towards an ethic of care. If suffering arises from disconnection, from self, from others, and from nature, then the cure is communion, not correction. Psychedelics reveal that what prohibition feared most, that consciousness, when trusted, tend towards empathy, not chaos. As David Nutt argued, the danger lies not in altered perception, but in unalterable dogma. Yet the Renaissance carries its own shadow. The corporate rush to patent psilocybin analogues risks repeating the same colonial logic that outlawed them. Extraction without reverence, i.e. access no longer forbidden, but restricted to those deemed deserving and able to pay. Enlightenment is being rebranded as wellness. Without community stewardship, the revival may become another branch of pharmaceutical industry it once opposed. Still, something essential has shifted. Science, pressed by evidence and courage, is rediscovering humility. The frontier is not outer space, but inner space. As in the old festivals and rites, the purpose is not escape, but reconnection to self, to others, to the living world. What Carhart Harris calls entropic liberation may simply be another word for freedom. In Chapter 3, if Chapter 3 explored the brain's own chemistry of transcendence, this chapter closes the circle. The substances once demonised as deviant now point towards coherence. The lesson is not that psychedelics are panaceas, but that the meaning itself is medicinal. To restore that truth is to return science to its oldest task, understanding not only how we live, but why. So the breakthrough was never just the substances themselves. It's the return of meaning, the realisation that healing comes from reconnection, not chemical correction. And if that's true, then the entire model of modern medicine, built on control, measurement and standardisation, starts to look incomplete. So what happens when we stop trying to fix people and start creating the conditions where they can reconnect? In the next video, we look at what happens when the rediscovery is absorbed by the market and where the meaning itself can be commodified. The next step in Chapter 5 still is Section 45, Open Source Knowledge and Anarchist Science.